Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, welcome back to our second language acquisition subject. And for today, we are going to learn about the nature of learner language. Learner language is written or spoken language which is produced by the learner. And why do we need to learn about learner language? Because we are going to identify the mistake or the error from the learners, and then we are going to solve the problems. In producing the second language acquisitions, usually the learner produces error or mistakes. And in errors and error analysis, there are 4 steps that the teacher should know. The first one is identifying errors, and the second one is describing the errors, and third, explaining errors, and the last is error evaluations. The first step is identifying errors. To identify errors, we have to compare the sentences learners produce with what seems to be the normal or correct sentences in the target language which correspondent with them. For example, Annie says, a man and a little boy was watching him. And it is not difficult to see that the correct sentence should be, a man and little boy were watching TV. Here, Annie made an error by putting was instead of were. But how can we identify that the students or the learner makes error or mistake? Because error and mistake are 2 different things. And now we need to distinguish error and mistake. Error reflects gaps in a learner's knowledge. They occur because the learner does not know what is the correct one. And mistakes reflect occasional lapses in the performances. They occur because in a particular instance, the learner is unable to perform what he or she knows. There is an example of apparent mistake in Jane's speech. Early in the narrative, he says, the beak of them contained a snake. He says, by putting ed in the end of the word, and it is in the form of past form, contained. However, in the final sentence, perhaps he says the basket contained a snake without putting ed in the end of the word contained, making what seems to be a past tense error. The second step in error analysis is describing errors. After we have understood about the error that the students or the learner made, now we are going to describe the errors. And in describing errors, we need to classifying errors into grammatical categories. For example, we could gather all the errors relating to verbs and then identify the different kinds of verb error in our sample. For example, error in the past tense. Previously, the example, we have understood that Jane's speech contained past tense errors. Trying to identify general ways in which the learner's utterances differ from the reconstructed target language utterances, including first, omissions, leaving out an item that is required for an utterance to be considered grammatical, and the second, misinformations, using one grammatical form in a place of another grammatical form, and the third one is misordering, putting the words in utterance in the wrong order. After we describe the errors, now it's time to explain the errors. We are going to explain it one by one. The first one is omissions. For example, learners leave out the article a and the and leave the s of plural nouns. Because, for example, in Bahasa Indonesia or in Indonesians, we do not or we rarely put a and the in the in the before we put noun, and also we do not put s if we want to describe about many or plural forms. The second one is overgeneralizations. For example, the use of ate in a place of ate, because in the learner's mindset that they think when we are going to talk about past form, we usually put ed in the end of the verb. However, there are many irregular forms when we are going to describe past form. And the next one is transfer errors. Reflect learners' attempts to make use of their A1 knowledge. For example, because their first language or their mother language is Bahasa Indonesia, usually they try to transfer the knowledge into the target language. However, in the target language, they have different requirement they have the different rules in producing sentences. The last one in error analysis is error evaluations. And the first one is global errors. Violate the overall structure of a sentence, and for this reason may make it difficult process. The second one is local errors. Affect only a single constituent in a sentence. After we as a teacher knows how to identify our students' error, now we need to know about the developmental patterns of second language acquisitions. There are 4 patterns. The first one is the early stages of L2 acquisitions. The second one is the order of acquisitions. The third one is sequence of acquisitions. And the fourth one is some implications. The first developmental patterns is the early stages of L2 acquisitions. In these stages, or in this stage, usually the learner face silent period. The learners make no attempts to say anything to begin with because they are too afraid to produce any kind of word or vocabulary. And the second one is proportional simplifications. Learners find it difficult to speak in a full sentences, so they frequently leave words out. For example, me no blue. However, the speaker wants to say I don't have a blue crayon because they don't have any or they face difficult to speak. They only speak what they try to deliver to their partner. Next is the order of acquisitions. To investigate the order of acquisitions, researchers choose a number of grammatical structures to study. Then they collect samples of learner language and identify how accurately each feature is used by different language. They rank the features according to how accurately each feature is used by the learners. Sequence of acquisitions. There are some stages that the learners of second language acquisitions usually face during the learning process. Stages in the acquisitions of past tense of it, for example, there are at least 5. Stage number 1, learners fail to mark the verb for past time of it. For example, they try to use it instead of ate. For example, yesterday I ate meatball with my mother. And after that, the learner comes to the second stage. Learners begin to produce irregular past tense form. Here, the learners have known or have understood about past tense of it is ate. So, the learners begins to speak correctly. Yesterday, I ate meatball with my mother. However, the learner often comes to the third stage, which is learners often generalize the regular past tense form by putting ed after the word it. And the learner will say, yesterday I ate meatball with my mother, because the learner try to overgeneralize, and sometimes they only put ed instead of irregular past form of it. After that, the learner comes to the fourth stage of sequence of acquisitions. Sometimes learners produce hybrid forms by creating past form of the word ate and put d, so ate it. And finally, the learners will come to the correct one or the last stage, which is learner produce correct irregular past tense forms. From the above mistake, the learner can produce correctly what is past form of it, and the learner can produce correctly that I ate meatball yesterday with my mother. Now we come to some implications. L2 acquisitions is systematic and to a large extent universal, reflecting ways in which internal cognitive mechanisms control acquisitions, irrespective of personal background of the learners or the setting in which they learn. Okay, now we have known that there are variability in learner language. Variability in learner language is systematic. Learners use the linguistic sources in predictable ways, and the use of specific grammatical forms has been shown to vary according to the linguistic context, the situational context, and the psycholinguistic context. Variability plays an integrative part of the overall pattern of development, with learners moving through a series of stages that reflect different kinds of variability. Okay, now we come to our last explanations of today's meeting, and I hope you enjoy the class. Don't forget to learn more theories related to the nature of learner language, and see you in the next meeting. Bye-bye.